Now, for some reason, it would seem that most illustration rares from this one set are flying under the radar right now, when most other illustration rare cards are absolutely flying. Now, Obsidian Flames for me has to be one of the most underrated sets from the Scarlet and Violet era, and what it lacks for in main chase SIR cards, it for sure makes up for in those beautiful illustration rare cards, as well as one of the best ETB promo cards from the era. And talking about said illustration rare cards, here we have all 12 of them in front of us here. And what a range of colours we have. We've got blues, greens, yellows, blacks, browns, reds, purples, everything. These 12 cards here on a page of your binder would look absolutely fantastic. And I love the mixture, varying from vintage Pokemon in the Gloom and Ninetales here, to your newer Pokemon such as Bellibolt and Palafin right here. But still, regardless of the era they come from, they're still very, very beautiful cards. Now, Gloom, for example, being one of my favourites that I've mentioned in many videos before. Same with this Ninetales here. And we're going to have a look at their prices in a second just to show how underappreciated they are. Because at the beginning, I said they're flying under the radar right now. And their prices would say that's true. Because, as I said, there's a lot of illustration rare cards right now that are absolutely flying. Whereas some of these, or most of these illustration rare cards from Obsidian Flames seem to be really flying under the radar. Starting off with the best card from the set in my most humble opinion, and I'm sure a lot of you will agree, this Ninetales right here is beautiful. I mentioned it in a couple of other videos before. When I've talked about 10 under 20 cards, I think I put it in that video. I also mentioned some of your most underrated illustration rare cards. Ninetales again featured in that, and with good reason. When you look at the price, under $30, for this Ninetales card right here, arguably one of, if not the most beautiful card from the whole set, and probably one of the best illustration rare cards from the entire era. When you can take into consideration the market we're in and how some illustration rare cards are absolutely flying, it really does make you question why a card as beautiful as this Ninetales here is currently sat at under $30. Now, as we can see, it has risen, yes, in the last few months, was at one point under $20 at around 17 there in December, and did double in value and rose to about 34 in the middle of February, but has since dropped off, and I'm not really too sure why. As I said, with the market we're in, illustration rare cards are really in right now. People are really appreciating them. Their values are flying. It really does baffle me. This Ninetales card here, Gen 1 Pokemon, beautiful, beautiful card, a fan favourite Pokemon as well. Why it's sat at around $30 and not 50, 60 plus. Another fantastic example of a beautiful, beautiful card being extremely undervalued, this Gloom right here. I've mentioned it before in another video, perhaps you've seen it, where I spoke about the variety of colours within this card. The way it absolutely pops is such a beautiful card. So when you see there's only $18 for a Gen 1 Pokemon, a strong grass type Pokemon as well, it's such a beautiful, beautiful card. Why is it only $18? Obsidian Flames really does have a plethora of beautiful illustration rare cards that are extremely underrated right now. Again, this one has risen, was under $10 not too long ago, but still only around a $10 rise is not a lot in the grand scheme of things when, as I said before, you look at some of the other illustration rare cards and how they've risen lately. Why is this Gloom not risen more? Why is it not $30, $40? It's a beautiful, beautiful card. Let's not also forget that when it comes to the price of a Pokemon card, it's often very heavily affected by how much nostalgia is in play. And what I want to say by that is, when it comes to those Pokemon from the earlier generations, let's not forget that people like me that were around back in the late 90s, early 2000s, we played the games, we collected the cards, we have a higher level of affection towards the Pokemon from those earlier generations as they were part of our childhood. Therefore, with so many of us in this situation, the price of Pokemon, of their cards from that era, usually are a little bit more, which in turn supports the case for this Ninetales and that Gloom card. It really does show how undervalued you are when you take in everything into consideration. Both Gen 1 Pokemon, both strong Gen 1 Pokemon, very desirable ones, Ninetales especially, a fan favourite, beautiful, elegant looking fire type Pokemon, under $28 when all these other illustration rare cards that, okay, they have their beauty about them, of course they do, but in my opinion, not on the level of this Ninetales, but they're absolutely flying $40, $50, $60. But this Ninetales is around $28 still. It really does show how undervalued Ninetales and the other illustration rare cards from this set really are. Here we have another example of a very undervalued Generation 1 illustration rare from this set. And of course, Pidgey, for those of you that don't know, most of the generations of Pokemon games on the first route will have a bird or a flying type Pokemon that you can catch. Now, Pidgey being the OG, some other examples going through the generations, you've got Houndour, you've got Taillow, Starly, Fletchinder, and the list goes on and on, right? Pidgey, of course, being the OG, and maybe to you, maybe to the untrained eye, maybe to someone who's not aware, this might just look like a very simple yellow and green drawing with some Pidgeys in the background and foreground. And yes, it kind of does look like that, but when you look into it further, right, this sign here being an ode to that original generation, it's obviously Route 1, which is where you found Pidgey. This being the grass here, of course, where you walk in and out of and find Rattata and Pidgey. Therefore, it's a very kind of important card. It has a lot of significance to the older generation, myself included, which is why I have a lot of love for this card, which is why it also surprises me why it's only $11. Yes, okay, it was only around $5 or $6 a couple months ago, and it has risen, but only around $5, which isn't a lot in the grand scheme of things. Yes, I'm not talking about the most craziest illustration rare. Of course, this is not Magikarp. This is not Groudon from Paradox Rift, for example, right? It's only a Pidgey, I get it, but still, when it's only $11 in the current market, when other illustration rare cards are going crazy, I feel like this one again is very undervalued and is deserving of a higher price. Guys, we've flown past 600 subscribers, which seems very surreal to say because it was just the other day I thanked you all for 500. So for those of you that are new here and have just subscribed, welcome to the channel. Thank you for being here. It's a pleasure to have you here and I hope you're enjoying the content. All of you, of course, as per usual, if you're enjoying the video, please don't hesitate to leave a like on the video as it really does help me out. And of course, for those of you that are new and are not yet subscribed, if you like the idea of a new TCG video every other day, please feel free to hit that subscribe button as I really would love to have you here. Now, moving on from Generation 1, move on to Generation 2. And here we have one of the pre-evolution or baby Pokemon, as you can call them, in Cleffa. Generation 2 seeing quite an introduction of a plethora of different pre-evolutions or baby Pokemon. Cleffa being one, and this card here is absolutely phenomenal. I love it. Purple is actually my favorite color, and that kind of purpley sort of bluey grey sort of sky is beautiful. I love that starry sky with the shooting star in the background there in Cleffa center frame. I absolutely adore this card. Now, this is one that, to be fair to it, has got quite a lot of love recently. It's been spoken about. As you can see, it was a couple months ago only around $10, but has pretty much tripled in value as it rose to almost 30. Yes, it's dropped off a couple dollars over the last few days, but still in general, it's had a decent amount of love, which I'm glad it has because it deserves it. But again, I think we're still talking about an undervalued or underrated card. Maybe not underrated, to be fair. I think it's rated well, just undervalued. For some reason, I think $27, I think this deserves more, considering, again, the market we're in, the prices of some of your other illustration rare cards. Again, I think we're looking here. This Cleffa card for me is better than $27 in my most humble opinion. Moving on to one of my favorite Pokemon from Generation 2. I love the exclusivity that this Pokemon has because if you don't know, you had to trade this Pokemon. You had to trade Scyther in order to obtain Scizor when it was holding a metal coat, which as a kid, no one had the cable, no one could play together, no one could link up, therefore no one traded for Pokemon, therefore no one had Alakazam, no one had Gengar, no one had Machamp, no one had Scizor, no one had Steelix, etc, etc. Therefore, this Pokemon always had a very decent level of exclusivity towards it, and it's just a cool looking Pokemon. Look at it there, Scizor. Such a fantastic looking Pokemon. And this artwork, because of the red in the background and the red of Scizor, it's kind of different. It's kind of difficult to distinguish the difference between the two. You have to kind of really look at the card to appreciate it more. I would perhaps prefer it if the background was sort of a lighter color, therefore you could see Scizor a little bit easier. That would be my only complaint about this card. But in general, it's a beautiful card and I really do like Scizor as a Pokemon. But when you look at it, $16 for, again, a Generation 2 Pokemon, one that, as I've just mentioned, due to its exclusivity, it's kind of a fan favorite from the era. It's a strong Pokemon, of course, being Bug Steel type. It's a beautiful card, beautiful Pokemon. So $16 for me, as I said, in the grand scheme of things, with the way things are right now, it really does surprise me that this one's sitting at 16 and isn't worth a little bit more. I'm surprised it's not 25, 30, to be honest with you. And again, another example of an undervalued card from this set. Now, unfortunately, this is the darker side of the community, right? We're looking at a Houndour card here that, yes, is very beautiful. There's a lot going on. Houndour is a desirable Pokemon from Generation 2 again, but as we look at the chart below, it was around $2 to $3 for the longest time, and in a matter of a few days to a week, it shot up to nearly $34, which As we can see from the shape of that graph, the way it rises so quickly, that's an artificial rise that stinks of market manipulation. When you look at a natural rise, you look at this Cleffa here, the way it gradually rises over time. Same with the Pidgey, same with the Gloom, same with the Ninetales. This is the type of rise you want to see. With this Houndour, unfortunately, it's very artificial. It's just shot up pretty much overnight. So I hope none of you bought when it was around sort of $25, $30. That's very expensive for this card. You're probably going to get burned. As you can see, it's dropped all the way back down to around $18, $19. Guys, in time, if you have bought this card too high, give it time, give it a year or two. I'm sure it will rise back up to $30 and so on. But for now, it's probably not quite worth that much. I'd say it's around a $20 card. You know, it's a good card. Houndour is a decent Pokemon. I like the card artwork, I really do. But the way it's risen and what it risen to is too much. It's market manipulation. Unfortunately, that's something that's going on right now in the community, but that's a story for another day. Now, we've talked about the illustration rare cards, how beautiful they are from this set and how undervalued a lot of them are. But what about cards that you can't obtain from opening packs? What about a certain card that can only be obtained as a promo from a certain sealed product? And of course, I'm referring to that Charmander ETB promo card. Now, looking at this card just for how it is on the face of it, it's a fantastic card, right? It's got beautiful artwork. There's a lot of colors there. I really do love it. And of course, Charmander is part of the original Generation 1 starter trio. The other two being part of another set, which we'll get onto in a second. That's also plays into my point as to why I think this Charmander card is underrated and undervalued. As I said, we'll get into that in a second. But Charmander, what do we know just from what we can see here? Of course, it's part of the evolution line that eventually evolves into Charizard. And as we know, it's arguable, it's debatable whether or not Charizard is the most popular Pokemon from the entire community. Umbreon, of course, is up there nowadays. Pikachu will always be up there. But Charizard is probably the fan favorite Pokemon, right? Now, Charmander, as you can see here, was only around $10, sort of $12 back in December. Has doubled in value, has gone up to around $25 US, which is good, but I still think it's undervalued. Now, I mentioned those other two starters from Generation 1, and here they are here in Stellar Crown. Now, here's the Bulbasaur, and here's the Squirtle. Now, maybe you'll notice it's the same type of artwork, right? They seem to be all in and around this house with some windows. There's some Pidgeys in play. Same style artwork, same kind of scenery. All three go together. They're all very beautiful cards. And the point being, these two cards right here, you can obtain from opening packs in Stellar Crown. You can't complete the trio unless you've got the Charmander here. And you can only get this Charmander if you open an Obsidian Flames ETB. Therefore, this card is that final piece of the puzzle, so to speak. But it's quite hard to obtain. ETBs are not the easiest thing to obtain. There's only a limited run of them. Once they're printed, they're printed. They don't really get reprinted. Therefore, this Charmander is quite a desirable card for various different reasons. And in my opinion, undervalued for that as well. $25 is not a lot for this Charmander card. Gen 1 starter, probably the fan favorite Gen 1 starter. Beautiful artwork, a missing jigsaw piece to a puzzle. $25 really isn't a lot for this card. Now, where have they gone wrong with this set? I get the point of this video is to talk about how undervalued quite a lot of these cards are and how undervalued the set is in general. But I just want to talk about where they've gone wrong with a couple things, because in my opinion, when I look at it, this set is very, very close to being a very, very strong set, one of the best from the era, but they missed a trick or two. There was a couple things that they either didn't do or didn't do well that I think just make this set kind of just good and not special like it really could have been. So to kick things off, let's look here at the special illustration rare cards in this set. Now, there's only 4. That's the main thing. That's the first thing, right? There's only 4. When we compare it to, for example, 151, you'll see there's 5. You've got Venusaur, Charizard, Blastoise, Alakazam, and Zapdos. And yes, you're going to say there's only one more card. There's only one less in Obsidian Flames. It makes a big difference. There's one extra big chase card missing. This, of course, being a fire type set. Can you imagine if they put like a Moltres card in here, like some fantastic kind of Moltres special illustration rare card, just to kind of beef it up a bit, give another chase card, give people another reason to open packs and chase something else. Charizard, of course, is a fan favorite, as I mentioned previously, but it's not everyone's favorite. And also this Charizard card here, we'll get onto in a second. I think they've kind of missed a trick or done something not too well here with this card as well. we'll touch on that. But the fact there's only 4 special illustration rare cards and not 5 or even 6 like there are in other sets really does kind of bump this down from a special to just a good, because these are your main chase cards, right? For example, you've got Surging Sparks, which has your Latias EX, your Milotic EX, and of course your Pikachu EX. Can you imagine if you just take that Milotic out there? That's a $100 card just gone, just like that, right? It's a very, very good card. It's a chase card for a lot of people. Can you imagine if they just take this Zapdos card out at 151, right? Just gone. Then you've only got the original trio and Alakazam. It's a bit more boring, right? It's just, there's not as much to chase. There's not as much reason to open packs. You're missing a really, really strong card there in Zapdos, right? Obsidian Flames, can you imagine just a Moltres sat right here next to this Pidgey? Just one extra card, right? It makes a big difference. Going back to the special illustration rare cards from Obsidian Flames, I just want to talk about how poor they are in my opinion as well. In general, they're just very underwhelming for chase cards. If you compare them to 151, look how beautiful that Venusaur is, that Charizard, that Blastoise, that Alakazam is fantastic. Look how beautiful that Zapdos is as well. They all have good reason to be high value chase cards. When you look at Obsidian Flames, they just look like more illustration rare cards. They don't look like SIRs to me. This ESQ here, for example, is so average in my most humble opinion, right? Everyone's entitled to their opinion, but for me, this would be a subpar illustration rare card, right? This in no way, shape or form for me is a very strong special illustration rare card. It just doesn't do it for me. I love Pidgey IR, right? I really do. It's the OG bird flying type Pokemon from Generation 1. I absolutely adore Pidgey IR. I really do love it. It was always in my team. But the artwork from this is just, it's illustration rare material for me. It's not special illustration rare for me, right? When you compare it to, for example, another flying type from Generation 1, this Zapdos here, the artwork is just 50, 100 times better than that Pidgey IR, in my most humble opinion. Everyone's entitled to their opinion, of course. Reverie and Charizard, not as bad. Reverie, again, doesn't really do it for me. There's a lot more going on, a lot more colours, and therefore it's a better card. Charizard, for me, probably the most underwhelming, with it being Charizard. It's a good card, but there's a lot better Charizard cards. We've had a lot better Charizard cards over the years. Normally they do give us really strong artworks for their Charizard cards, but this one for me, just there's something about it. I was never 100% sold on it. So collectively, as a 4, for me, the special illustration rare cards, if they kind of did them again, if they could, if that was possible, and add another one in there, as I said in the previous point, I think this would really beef up this set and make it a really, really top tier set. That's another thing that, in my opinion, they've kind of not messed up on. Of course, it's open to opinion, but for me, they could have done differently and made this set better. And talking about that Charizard card, the SIR from Obsidian Flames, I did say for me, yeah, I like it, but it's a bit underwhelming for a Charizard card. Normally we get better artworks. And I do think the price says the same thing. I think the community with the price of the card are kind of saying the same thing, that $73 for a Charizard SIR card is quite underwhelming, right? You'd expect Charizard, being the main chase from a set, to be worth quite a lot more. Of course, if you look at the Charizard from 151, which this one right here, as we've touched on before, this one goes for almost $300 right now. So you'd expect Charizard, being the main chase of a set, you'd expect it to go for a bit more, right? But as we can see from the price, from the card, I think the community are kind of saying the same thing that I am, that it's just slightly underwhelming. It's not a bad card, but it's just not the best one they've ever come out with, right? Now, the very final point is the lack of IRs, SIRs, full arts, etc, etc, there's just not enough. And when you look here, for example, right, Obsidian Flames, as you can see here, 230 total cards in the set. And then when you look at, for example, Twilight Masquerade, 226. So pretty much the same, more or less, right? Twilight Masquerade actually has 4 less, which actually supports my claim in a way. Now, so when we look, for example, Obsidian Flames, 4 SIRs or Pokemon cards and 4 SIR supporter cards, so 6 in total. Then when we look at Twilight Masquerade, as we can see here, you've got 7 SIR Pokemon cards and you've got 4 SIR supporter cards, so 11 in total. So 6 compared to 11. Twilight Masquerade, despite having the same number of cards in the set, so same size set, has almost double the amount of special illustration rare cards. When you look at gold cards here, Twilight Masquerade has 6, Obsidian Flames only has 3. Twilight Masquerade again having double. We've touched on before how many illustration rare cards there are. As you can see here from Obsidian Flames, there are 12 in total. Twilight Masquerade has a lot. Here we can see as we go up, you've got 6, 12, 18, 21 Okay, so 12 compared to 21, again, almost double the amount of illustration rare cards. So as you can see from the numbers that we've just analysed, Obsidian Flames for me, still a good set and one I really do love, but it was so close to being one of the best from the entire era. If it had just been given a few more illustration rare cards, a few more SIR cards, a few more gold cards, just like Twilight Masquerade had, which as we can see, the numbers are the same, pretty much the same size set, but Twilight Masquerade a lot beefier when it comes to your chase cards, your SIRs, your illustration rares, your gold cards, etc, etc. If Obsidian Flames was given that same amount of love in regards to the amount of good chase cards, it would be a fantastic set. But anyway guys, that does conclude things for today's video. This is, as I said, one of my favorite sets from the era. It has some beautiful, beautiful illustration rare cards, a lot from the earlier generations, which is why I personally like it. But I want to know what you guys think, so let me know in the comments down below what you think of Obsidian Flames, if you agree with my comments about how it could have been improved, or if not, how you think you can improve the set, and what your opinions are on the cards we've looked at today. That does conclude things for today guys, so if you are still watching, a massive thank you. That support is hugely appreciated. I hope you've enjoyed the video, and if so, please feel free to leave a like on it, as it really does help me out. Guys, if you didn't catch up on my video where I talked about the new Destined rival set and why I think give it some time and it will be great, you can check that out right here. Guys, as always, I've been Pokecharla. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.